Well, we hope that that was an interesting video for you to just to see how the Bible has impacted our world. But it's not just about big world issues. It's ultimately about individuals. And again, Matt, thanks very much for coming and sharing with us this evening. Now, we know that you're married to Meg, and that's all.
Isn't she lucky?
Isn't she lucky? So, be interested, where are you from originally, Matt?
Well, originally, I'm from top of the Rhondda Valley in Treherbert. Okay. And then when I turned 10, we had our migration papers signed and we moved to Aberdeen.
So you went across the valleys?
We went across the mountain.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay.
Not many people would make that journey.
Now, when you were on a few weeks ago, you made mention of the fact that you were brought up in a Christian home.
I was indeed.
Yeah. Matt, were you?
No, actually, I think I'm the only person in my entire family that's ever gone to church.
So what was your Christian, what was the Christian influence on your life when you were a child? Was there any?
Probably none up until I was probably in year 6 when I moved to Aberdeen. Mum really wanted me to go to St. John's High School, but to go there, I had to be baptised and confirmed. So I was baptised and confirmed in the same day. I was baptised in the Sunday morning service, and then I was confirmed in the Sunday night service. So
it's a pretty quick turnaround.
It was a very quick turnaround. But did I have a faith then? I'll openly say no. It was something I had to do. Otherwise, I was going to Aberdeen Boys' School, and I did not want to go to Aberdeen Boys' School. Okay.
We're not going to, disclaimer, that's Matt's personal opinion there, but we're not going to worry about that. Okay.
Doesn't exist anymore.
So you ended going up to St. John's Church in Wales School?
Yes.
I think, in there, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, a faith environment?
I guess so, yes. We had assemblies that were all based, Bible-based, and we would have services in St. Alban's Church. Probably once a term, maybe even twice a term, depending on what holidays or what church events would have happened in that term. As I got older, I would do anything possible to get out of them. Sometimes we just managed me to have more of a lie-in and then go to school after it. And because my mum worked in my school, I got my mark as if I went to the service and not. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So your mum was in on it?
Yeah, she was right in on it.
So, interested, you mentioned about sort of school assemblies, going to straightforward church services. Mm-hmm. And within that, we've been talking to people, obviously online, about the importance of something called the Bible, which is a really foreign concept. We've got the census, as I mentioned earlier. Everybody's expecting that numbers are going to be decreasing even more about people identifying as Christian. So, Bible, strange. Yeah. Praying, strange. Yeah. Singing hymns.
You wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't do that. Okay, so this sort of spiritual stuff then would have been a really alien concept to you as a young teenager, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Even the concept of going to church every Sunday was something that just wouldn't be done. Sunday was for lie-ins and recoveries, but not getting up and go into somewhere to listen to somebody talk and read from the Bible for an hour or two. But everything changed, obviously.
So how did it change? If you've gone from thinking the Bible was boring to you've brought your Bible in, it's got little highlighty bits on. So how have you gone from thinking it's boring?
Well.
It's bigger than mine. Boring to thinking that it's something worth carrying around in your car?
Yeah, so I think there was a big turning point in my life where I had a very negative family experience. And that really took me on a downward spiral into something that I didn't want to go. And I was doing things and being with people that, I guess on the surface, I knew that was wrong, but I was looking for something to be right. And I was looking for something to make the pain that I was feeling through that situation go away, and just couldn't find that piece to fit in. But I was in school one day. I think I was about well, I don't think I know, I was 17, and it was Six Nations time, around the same time as
we won't mention that.
No,
Matt.
okay.
Right, okay.
But these people who went to a church, they were handing out things, and they invited me along to their church to come watch the rugby, and I did. I thought, great, somewhere to go. But then from then on, I started hanging around with them more. I started socializing with them in school, outside school. I went to the youth club on a Friday night. I actually braved getting up on a Sunday morning and going on a Sunday morning. But then from then on, hearing everything that was spoken, what was sung, just kept sitting with me, and something grew within inside me and changed me to a point where I would look back on my life over the last few months that I started going to the church, and I was a much better person. I was a changed person. I was a happier person, and the pain that I felt was no longer there. I guess I found the peace I was going for. Then looking back, I guess the common denominator of all of the time I spent there was God, and from that point I just surrendered everything and decided to follow God.
And you were 17, 18?
I would have been 18.
18 years of age.
I'm 30 now, so
How many years is that? I can't do
12
maths.
years.
12 years.
That's a big deal for an 18-year-old, isn't
Yeah.
it, in Aberdeen to suddenly kind
Definitely.
of...
I think from the place I was in, I think there was only one direction to go, and I guess that was up. And you can look at that phrase in whatever way you want. You can up towards heaven or up out of the pit. But I was needing something, and I pretty much would have tried everything I could, and the only thing that worked was going to church.
And I guess for people listening in this evening, as I mentioned, Bible, prayer.
Mm-hmm.
We use the word worship, but sort of coming together as God's people and singing. And community, you talked about it, I guess, isn't it? As being fundamental elements to what it is to be a follower of Jesus.
Before following Jesus, I could have limited my Bible knowledge to baby Jesus or Jesus on the cross or David and Goliath and Noah. But then all of a sudden, my eyes been open to so many more interesting stories in the Bible, definitely things that can relate to us today that I've never read before. And I'm still, to this day, I'm still finding stories or things that happen in the Bible that are absolutely mind-blowing to me.
Cool, brilliant.
Matt, we were just talking to you about the Bible, and you were telling us how even now there are passages that you read and you're like, I either have never read that or never really understood what that meant. So I wonder, is there one that you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, more recently, actually, and this passage really has just stuck with me over the last few weeks after I read it. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever read Joshua. I'm looking at you, probably have, yes?
Yes.
But have you ever read Joshua beyond Jericho and managed to get through past the dividing of all the lands? Well, I've never have until recently because I got really bored after. But through all that, when it goes off to Asher and it goes off to Dan and then Joshua's inheritance, there comes this gem of a chapter in Joshua chapter 20. And it talks about, entitled the Cities of Refuge, and it talks about that there were cities in all the lands that were designated as cities of refuge, where if someone has accidentally caused a crime, could flee to those cities, and those cities could give refuge to those people while everything. And it was down to those cities to decide the punishment or whatever. But those people had to stay there. At the end, that person is not released from their judgment of that accident crime they committed until the priest or the high priest has died. And for me, to make that connection with Jesus today is like everything that I've done, I'm set free from because my high priest was killed because of it. And for me, to read that in the Old Testament, which was like years and years and years before Jesus and years and years and years before me, to know that there was refuge, a place of refuge to go to, and my refuge is in Jesus. And because he died, I'm set free. But I would recommend reading Joshua 20 and finding those connections, because there's loads of connections of what the city was to what Jesus is. It's just a great connection, and it's just blown my mind over the last few weeks, and I can't get away from the chapter.
That's really, really encouraging. And just as a sort of say, this place is called the Sanctuary, and that's exactly what we're talking about there, isn't it? It's a place to meet with God and to be safe in him, which is exactly your story there, Matt. Now, Meg told me quite a disturbing story about your shower earlier on. So,
Wow.
So do you want to fess up what she was talking about?
I think Meg's a better storyteller than me. Actually, I think I'm a better storyteller, but I'll let Meg tell it.
I was just sharing that in the first house me and Matt lived in when we were married, our bathroom was right at the front of the house. And in fact, the bathroom window was above the front door. And quite often I'd come home from work. I'm not sure why you weren't in work in these stories, but I would come home from work and I could hear him singing. We had this big shared driveway with other houses, and I could hear him singing from the bottom of the drive because he'd have the window open and he'd be singing worship songs in the shower, apparently at the time I'd come home from work.
I could give you a few pointers if you want.
So music is a big part of who you are.
It's a massive part of who I am and how I view church and how I view Jesus. Because, like what we talked about earlier, where, yes, this plays a massive part in learning more, but for as a new Christian at the time, I didn't, like I said, I only knew baby Jesus and Jesus on the cross and some random stories that happened in the New Testament. And I couldn't get into debates, or I couldn't get into sharing what was in here. But what I could learn and what I could get along with is lyrics from songs. And there's so many lyrics that have stuck with me through my entire journey, that's taught me so much about God.
Because one of the things that we're really passionate about, Matt, is sort of the idea of the soul and how to nourish and feed the soul, because that's what it is all about there. Would you say that sort of connection through music has helped your soul and helped you to connect with Jesus?
Yeah, definitely. There's been so many times where I've been in a bad place or find myself really upset and confused, maybe about why am I even a Christian? But then I hear songs, and especially the lyrics in songs, so actually, yes, this brings me back to why I believe. And there's a great song, it's Heart of Worship, and when everything fades away and all is stripped away, there's still Jesus. I think that's really one of the key things that the song does, that it can just, in a moment, it can remind you of why it was all done.
And Meg, let's do a little bit of a question in a Meg time again.
Okay.
So Meg, give us some other instances in history of how it's not just about spoken word, but God has used different things, Tess, in you here now, to express truth about himself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that music has played a big part in a lot of it. When you read the Bible, you can see where people have used song. Way back in the Old Testament, and even through the New Testament, there would have been lots of people who weren't able to read. So there would have been lots of oral tradition, poetry, storytelling, that all would have been part of how they communicated the truth about God. But you could go further and look at artists and things like that all are used to communicate God. And I think sometimes we limit the word worship to music. And for us non-musical people, that can be really difficult, but we can express how we feel about God in poetry, in art, in dance, in whatever way kind of works for our soul.
I'm from a building background. Can
you express through building?
Absolutely. I'll say it quite easily. If I go into a cathedral, the grandeur of a place like that, you just sort of think, there's something spiritual. There's a phrase, isn't there? They talk about thin places, a place where you sense the presence of God in bricks and mortar, and the temple that we find in in the Bible is all about communicating truth about God through even bricks and mortar, so all sorts of different ways. Now, Matt, you've been really kind of honest about how you connect with God, not just through his word, but also through song. Would you say that kind of following Jesus in those 12 years has been a straight line for you?
No way, no way I could say it has been a straight line. There's been ups and downs. There's been.
I'm one of the ups, right?
Yeah, definitely. That was the up. Next to becoming a Christian, there's
me.
and then there's the children. But no, there's been some really difficult times. Times where I've even questioned whether I am a Christian. I think we had a debate the other night about what if we're not? What if everything we're doing just not it, and we'll get to heaven, and then God goes, I just didn't know you. It's like, are we doing everything we can to serve Jesus in the best way that we can? But yeah, definitely not a straight path.
We had that conversation in the car, didn't we? And we were talking about. For me, it come from reading a bit of one of the Gospels that talks about this fig tree. And Jesus talks about a fig tree, and he talks about how it had leaves but no fruit. And then he talks about the temple, in fact. And the point is that this fig tree had leaves, it looked healthy, but it produced no fruit. And when we were talking, we were like, well, I work for a church. And, and Matt volunteers in the church with me. We look healthy, but are we producing fruit? Is our soul in the right place, and is our soul healthy? And for me, I'm going to try and say this in the most unspiritual way possible to not sound weird, but I had this Sunday where I was sitting there, and in our church we're doing a series on the cross and why Jesus died on the cross, and our senior pastor was preaching, and I was sitting there thinking, yeah, I get it, but why would he do that? Why would he actually do that for me? And just in that moment, I felt like somebody, probably God, was talking to my soul and saying, because you're my child, and we've got children, both boys, and we love our kids, and we love them because they're our kids, not because they do anything, just because they're our kids, and that love is the same love that God has for us, which is why he sent his son to die on the cross.
Yeah, and I guess if you think of an illustration that's helped me during the difficult times, is that someone told me once that if I anchor myself to Jesus, then no matter what the storm is, that I'll be able to be close. But then if you think of an anchor, if you're far away from your anchor, then your boat is going to sway a long way. But if your anchor is a short anchor and you're close to your boat or you're close to your anchor, there's not much sway in it. So I think it's finding those ways to connect with Jesus, with God, whether that be through song, whether it be through reading your Bible or praying, is finding the ways, or dancing or art, or whatever way you can find to connect with Jesus, is that we need to do it, and we need to do it more often than we think we should.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Matt. I think time has gone, but I just want to say, really appreciate your honesty. And the fact that as a straightforward guy, you've expressed something about how you have gone on in your faith journey, and that your soul has been touched and has been nourished, and you've got a beautiful wife as well. So it's been,
winning.
It's been a good deal, isn't it, for you?
It's a great deal.
Yeah. I met my wife in church 36 years ago. I was only 2 at the time.
We're catching up.
That's a lie.
We're catching up, aren't we? We got 6 years.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks very much again, Matt, for sharing. I think we're going to go now to our final song of the evening, Back to Maze.